Captain Roland Rook Marquette stood motionless as the announcement echoed through the assembly hall. His spine rigid, face carefully blank. He maintained the perfect military posture that had become second nature over 15 years of service. Around him, the vast chamber of Nexus Station's command center held 200 of the Orion Strike Force's finest warriors. Not one of them dared to look directly at him. "Captain Marquette," Admiral Hargrove's voice boomed across the hall. "Your recent actions have demonstrated a fundamental lack of respect for chain of command. While your combat record remains exemplary, your judgment has proven questionable." Rook kept his gaze fixed on the far wall, on the massive Orion Strike Force emblem, a silver fist clutching stars. 3 weeks ago, that emblem had represented everything he'd dedicated his life to. Now it felt like a mockery. "Effective immediately," the Admiral continued. "You are reassigned to partner training. You will be paired with Lieutenant Serene Kothar." A ripple of murmurs swept through the assembly. Partner training was typically reserved for new recruits or remedial cases, not for the OSF's most decorated tactical commander. Captain Ortega stepped forward, her severe features highlighted by the hall's blue lighting. "Lieutenant Kothar, present yourself." From the assembly's periphery, a small figure approached. At first glance, she appeared almost childlike beside the towering human and draconian warriors. As she drew closer, Rook took in the details: delicate avian features, luminescent eyes, and the vestigial prismatic plumage that marked her as Zeli, one of the rarest species in the Alliance. "Lieutenant Serene Kothar," Ortega announced. "Assessment metrics: lowest comprehensive combat score in the current cohort. Minimal firepower capacity. 0 recorded battlefield successes." Across the hall, several veterans failed to suppress their smirks. One whispered loudly enough for Rook to hear, "He got stuck with a pet." Ortega's gaze cut toward Rook, her voice lowering to a pitch only he and the approaching Zeli could hear. "Don't fail this assignment, Marquette. Your career can't afford another mistake." The lieutenant stopped precisely 3 paces from Rook and offered a crisp salute. Despite the humiliation burning in his chest, Rook couldn't help noticing her composure, while every other face in the room held either pity or amusement. Lieutenant Kothar's expression remained serene, true to her name. Her lips curved into a slight smile that seemed to hold some private knowledge. "Captain Marquette," she said, her voice melodic yet formal. "It's an honor to train under your guidance." Rook returned the salute mechanically. "Lieutenant," he acknowledged, the word tasting like ash. As the assembly dispersed, Rook caught Lieutenant Cadan Torres, once his peer, now technically his superior, watching with an unreadable expression. They had flown countless missions together before Rook's promotion. Now Torres averted his gaze and joined the departing officers. Alone with his new partner, Rook finally allowed himself to properly look at Lieutenant Kothar. She couldn't have stood more than 5 feet tall, her frame slight beneath the standard OSF uniform. The fabric had been tailored to accommodate the ridge of feathers running from her neck to her spine, feathers that seemed to shimmer subtly despite the harsh lighting. "Report to Training Base 7 at 0600 tomorrow," he said curtly. "We'll begin with basic weapons assessments." Lieutenant Kothar nodded, that same placid smile never wavering. "I look forward to it, Captain." As she turned to leave, Rook caught a strange flicker of light across her plumage, almost like a ripple of electricity. He blinked, and it was gone. Later, alone in his quarters, downsized as part of his demotion, Rook slammed his fist against the wall. The pain was welcome, something tangible to focus on besides the shame. He had been the ace of the Orion Strike Force, single-handedly saving the Proxima colony from annihilation during the Taraxis incursion. One honest assessment of Admiral Hargrove's flawed strategy, spoken in what he'd thought was a closed briefing, and now he was babysitting the most useless officer in the fleet. His terminal chimed with an incoming message. Rook hesitated, then activated the screen. Captain Ortega's stern face appeared. "Marquette," she said without preamble. "I need to be clear about something. Lieutenant Kothar's assignment to you isn't random. Command has reasons. She may be last in combat metrics, but she's here for a purpose. Remember that." Before he could ask what purpose a combat-incapable alien could possibly serve in an elite strike force, Ortega cut the connection. Rook stared at the blank screen, feeling the first stirrings of suspicion beneath his anger. He'd assumed this assignment was purely punitive, a way to humble the outspoken hero. But Ortega's message suggested something else, something he couldn't yet see. He called up Lieutenant Kothar's service record. It was suspiciously sparse. Born on the Zeli homeworld of Elysium Prime, recruited 3 years ago under a special xenobiological integration program, training scores consistently below average in every measurable category. And yet, somehow, she'd been assigned to Nexus Station, the most elite posting in the quadrant. Nothing made sense. Rook closed the file and gazed out his small viewport at the stars beyond. Tomorrow, he would begin training the useless lieutenant. And perhaps, if he was careful, he would start to understand why the OSF's command structure had paired them together. The morning found Rook in Training Bay 7, meticulously arranging standard-issue weapons on the demonstration table. If he was to be saddled with this assignment, he would approach it with the same precision he applied to combat. The door hissed open at exactly 0600. Lieutenant Kothar entering with perfect punctuality. "Good morning, Captain," she said, her voice carrying that same melodic quality he'd noticed yesterday. Up close, he could see that her eyes weren't simply luminescent. They contained subtle rings of color that shifted as she moved, like oil on water. "Lieutenant," he responded flatly. "We'll start with basic sidearm proficiency. Take position at the firing line." She moved to comply, but even her walk betrayed her limitations. Zeli evolved as gliding creatures, their bone structure significantly lighter than humans. Her steps had an almost floating quality, lacking the solid stance a warrior needed. Rook selected a standard-issue pulse pistol and held it out. "Demonstrate your grip and stance." When she took the weapon, the disparity became immediately apparent. The pistol, designed for human proportions, looked absurdly large in her delicate hands. Her fingers barely reached the trigger. "This is your assigned sidearm?" Rook asked, unable to keep the disbelief from his voice. "Yes, Captain, standard issue." That infuriating smile never left her face. Rook activated the target drones. 3 holographic adversaries appeared downrange, advancing slowly. "3 shots. Center mass," he ordered. Lieutenant Kothar raised the pistol. Her form was atrocious, arms too straight, balance off-center. She squeezed the trigger, and the first shot went wide, missing the drone entirely. The second shot hit the leftmost drone's shoulder, a superficial wound at best. For the third shot, her weapon appeared to snag on her uniform. The discharge went wild, striking a ceiling panel. Except, Rook frowned. The errant shot had somehow triggered a power surge in the drone control system. All 3 targets suddenly froze, then collapsed as their projectors overloaded. "System malfunction," announced the training bay's automated voice. "Resetting targets." Rook stared at the ceiling panel. There was no damage where the shot should have hit. He looked back at Lieutenant Kothar, who was calmly lowering the pistol. "That was unfortunate," she said. "Shall we try again?" By midday, Rook's frustration had escalated to fury. They had cycled through every basic weapon in the arsenal. With each, Lieutenant Kothar demonstrated the same pattern. Initial incompetence followed by some inexplicable malfunction that either disabled the target or created conditions that made further testing impossible. When she accidentally triggered the training bay's sprinkler system during rifle drills, soaking them both and shorting out the targeting computer, Rook had reached his limit. Enough! He shouted, water dripping from his uniform. What kind of game are you playing, Lieutenant? Her feathers had darkened with moisture, the prismatic colors more pronounced. Game, Captain. I'm simply trying to adapt to equipment designed for physiologies very different from my own. That shot didn't hit anything that would trigger the sprinklers, Rook said, stepping closer to her. Just like your stray shot earlier, didn't actually hit the ceiling panel. For the first time, her smile faltered slightly. Perhaps you're right, Captain. My coordination isn't what it should be. Before he could press further, Captain Ortega's voice came over the comm. Captain Marquette, report to my office, immediately. 15 minutes later, still damp from the sprinkler incident, Rook stood at attention before Ortega's desk. Her office was spartanly furnished, dominated by a massive tactical display showing Nexus Station's position relative to nearby systems. Explain the flooding of Training Bay 7, she said without preamble. Training accident. Captain, Lieutenant Kothar's shot triggered the emergency systems. Ortega's eyes narrowed. The emergency systems that require a direct hit to a recessed panel protected by a security cover? Rook hesitated. I'm still assessing the lieutenant's capabilities. I see. Ortega leaned back, studying him. And your assessment so far? Permission to speak freely? Always. Marquette. Though remember where that got you last time? Rook ignored the jab. She's the worst shot I've ever seen. Her physical capabilities are substandard. She can barely hold a regulation weapon. Yet somehow, her failures consistently trigger system malfunctions that end the training sessions. It's almost as if... As if what? Ortega interrupted. Rook weighed his words carefully. As if the malfunctions aren't accidental. Something flickered across Ortega's face. Satisfaction, perhaps. Interesting theory. Continue training her, Captain. I expect daily reports on her progress. May I request alternative equipment? Weapons scaled to her physiology? Denied. Lieutenant Kothar must adapt to standard issue, just like any OSF officer. As Rook turned to leave, Ortega added, Oh, and Marquette? The annual qualifications are in 3 weeks. All training pairs must participate, including you and Lieutenant Kothar. Rook froze. The qualifications were notoriously demanding, a brutal gauntlet of combat scenarios, tactical challenges, and endurance tests. Teams that failed were typically reassigned to outpost duty on frontier worlds. With respect, Captain, we won't be ready. Then I suggest you find a way to work with your partner more effectively. Ortega's tone made it clear the discussion was over. That evening, Rook returned to his quarters to find Lieutenant Kothar waiting outside his door. She had changed into dry clothes, but her feathers still looked somewhat damp, clumping together in small, iridescent patches. Lieutenant, he acknowledged stiffly. Is there a problem? No problem. Captain, I thought perhaps we could discuss today's training in a less institutional setting. Rook wanted to refuse, to retreat into solitude and nurse his growing resentment. But Ortega's warning about the qualifications nagged at him. If they failed, his career wouldn't just stall, it would effectively end. Fine, he said, keying open his door. Come in. His quarters were utilitarian, a bed, desk, small seating area, and kitchenette. The only personal touch was a holographic projection of his former squadron, taken after the Proxima colony mission. Lieutenant Kothar moved to the image, studying the faces. The famous Raptor Squadron, she said. You saved thousands of lives that day. We did our job, Rook replied, unwilling to reminisce. May I? She gestured to the kitchenette. Before he could answer, she was already opening compartments, examining his meager stock of rations. These military provisions lack essential nutrients for prolonged performance, particularly for a human of your metabolic rate. I wasn't aware you were a nutritionist, Lieutenant. The Zeli understand metabolism quite well. Captain, our own systems require constant calibration. Without asking permission, she began combining various ration packets, adding water, and applying heat. Rook watched with growing irritation that slowly transformed into curiosity. Her movements in the kitchen were nothing like her clumsy handling of weapons. Here, she was graceful, precise, each motion flowing into the next with efficiency. Within minutes, she presented him with a steaming bowl. The contents looked nothing like the original ration packets. The aroma was surprisingly appealing. "What is this supposed to be?" he asked, taking the bowl warily. "A recalibration," she replied, that knowing smile returning. "Your system is depleted. This will help." Against his better judgment, Rook took a spoonful. The flavor was complex, hints of spice balancing the savory base. More importantly, he felt an immediate surge of energy as he swallowed, as if the food was somehow metabolizing instantly. "How did you do this with standard rations?" he asked between bites. "Intention matters, Captain," she said cryptically, preparing a smaller portion for herself. The same ingredients yield different results depending on how they're approached. "Like how the same bullet yields different results when you fire it," he challenged. Lieutenant Kothar met his gaze, her shifting eyes unreadable. "Perhaps. Or perhaps some systems are more responsive to subtle influences than others." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Despite his suspicion, Rook found himself relaxing as the meal's strange energizing effect spread through his body. "Why are you here, Lieutenant?" he finally asked. "Not here in my quarters. Here on Nexus Station. Your combat scores don't qualify you for the OSF." She set down her spoon with deliberate care. "The universe is full of metrics, Captain, some more visible than others." "That's not an answer." "No," she agreed. "But it's the only one I can give tonight." She stood, gathering the empty bowls. "Tomorrow's training. I believe we're scheduled for the low-gravity obstacle course?" Rook nodded. "I suggest you rest well. Your body will need to adjust to different probabilities." After she left, Rook lay awake for hours, turning her words over in his mind. Different probabilities, subtle influences, intention matters. None of it made sense. Unless a wild theory began forming. The Zeli were known to be a secretive species. Rumors persisted about latent telepathic abilities, though nothing had ever been proven. Could Lieutenant Kothar possess some form of psychokinesis? Some way to influence equipment or environments? If so, why hide it behind a facade of incompetence? And why would Ortega knowingly pair him with such an operative? He fell asleep still searching for answers, his dreams filled with prismatic feathers and knowing smiles. The low-gravity obstacle course occupied an entire section of Nexus Station's training ring. With gravity reduced to 20% of standard, it presented unique challenges. Momentum became both weapon and liability. Precise control was essential. Rook arrived early to find Lieutenant Kothar already there, performing what appeared to be a meditative ritual. Her eyes were closed, arms extended, feathers fully erect along her spine. The prismatic colors caught the light, sending small rainbows dancing across the walls. He cleared his throat. "Lieutenant!" Her eyes opened immediately, feathers flattening. "Captain, I was just preparing." "The course requires partnered completion," he explained, pointing to the elaborate maze of barriers, zip lines, and target zones. "We'll be tethered at the wrist. Your movements affect mine, and vice versa. The goal is to reach the far platform while neutralizing all hostile targets." "And we're competing against other teams?" she asked, eyeing the course. "Yes, 5 other pairs are scheduled for today's session." As if on cue, the other teams began arriving. Rook recognized Lieutenant Torres among them, paired with a massive draconian warrior whose scaled armor glinted under the lights. Torres nodded curtly in Rook's direction, but made no move to approach. "Attention!" came the automated announcement. "Low-gravity training commencing in 3 minutes. Teams, take your positions." Rook led Lieutenant Kothar to their starting platform. A technician approached with the tether, a flexible but unbreakable cord that would link them for the duration of the exercise. "This could be challenging with our size differential," Rook said as the tether locked around their wrists. "Follow my lead and try not to—" "Team's ready," the system interrupted. "Exercise begins in 5, 4. Rook took a deep breath, centering himself. This was familiar territory. Even with a useless partner, he could navigate the course effectively. 3, 2, 1, begin. He launched them forward with a powerful push, immediately compensating for Lieutenant Kothar's lighter weight. The first section was a simple traverse across floating platforms. Easy enough if you understood momentum control. To his surprise, the lieutenant matched his movements with unexpected coordination. Her earlier clumsiness seemed to have vanished. They cleared the first section ahead of the other teams. "Targets deploying," announced the system. 3 holographic adversaries materialized, armed with stun weapons. In low gravity, even training rounds could send you spinning out of control. "Take the left," Rook ordered, drawing his sidearm. "I'll handle the other 2. Lieutenant Kothar nodded, raising her pistol. Her first shot went predictably wide, but instead of hitting nothing, it struck a hidden sensor on the wall. Suddenly, a bypass route illuminated, a shortcut not part of the standard course. "System recalibration," announced the computer. "Alternative path authorized." Rook stared at her in disbelief. "That's not possible. Those routes only activate for certified instructors." Her smile returned, more enigmatic than ever. "Fortunate coincidence. Captain, shall we proceed?" The coincidence gave them a significant lead. As they progressed through the course, similar malfunctions continued to work in their favor. A jammed gate inexplicably opened when Lieutenant Kothar stumbled against it. A target drone self-destructed when her wild shot hit a nearby wall panel. By the time they reached the final platform, they had finished the course in record time, nearly 2 minutes ahead of Torres and his draconian partner. As the gravity slowly normalized, Rook pulled Lieutenant Kothar aside, keeping his voice low. "What are you doing? What happened to the clumsy alien who couldn't hit a target 3 feet away?" "I'm adapting, Captain," she replied calmly. "Isn't that what you wanted?" "Those weren't adaptations. The course practically reconfigured itself for us." Lieutenant Kothar's expression remained placid, but her feathers flared slightly. "Perhaps the universe favors us today." Before Rook could respond, Ensign Miri Kwan approached with a data tablet. The young tech specialist managed the station's training metrics, and her perpetually worried expression had deepened into outright confusion. "Captain Marquette," she said, holding out the tablet. "I've been asked to verify today's course data. There are anomalies." Rook took the tablet, scanning the readout. According to the system, their record time had been achieved through a series of authorized instructor overrides, commands that neither he nor Lieutenant Kothar had the clearance to issue. "This is incorrect," he said, returning the tablet. "We issued no overrides." Ensign Kwan's eyes darted nervously to Lieutenant Kothar, then back to Rook. "The system disagrees, sir. And there's more. During yesterday's weapon training, similar anomalies appeared. Sensor ghosts, phantom energy signatures. Almost like—" "Like what, Ensign?" Rook prompted when she hesitated. "Like something was manipulating the electrical systems directly." She lowered her voice. "Sir, I've worked Nexus Station systems for 3 years. I've never seen patterns like this." After Ensign Kwan left, Rook faced his partner with growing suspicion. "Lieutenant, I'm only going to ask this once, and I expect an honest answer. Are you manipulating the training systems?" For a moment, something like regret flickered across her features. "Captain Marquette, I assure you I possess no capability to override secure military systems." It was, Rook noted, an answer that addressed the accusation without actually denying it. That night, unable to sleep, Rook accessed the station's archives. He searched for any reference to Zeli abilities, psychokinesis, electromagnetic manipulation, anything that might explain Lieutenant Kothar's luck. The results were frustratingly vague. Zeli were described as empathically attuned, with natural harmonic resonance, meaningless xenobiological jargon. But one reference caught his attention: a classified report on probability manipulation among avian evolved sentients. The document itself was restricted, but the abstract mentioned documented cases of environmentally beneficial outcomes when Zeli observers were present. Environmentally beneficial outcomes, like training systems that malfunctioned in exactly the right way, like shots that missed targets but hit hidden sensors, like ration packs transformed into revitalizing meals. Rook leaned back, connecting dots. If Lieutenant Kothar could somehow influence probability, nudge events toward favorable outcomes, it would explain everything. It would also make her an incredibly valuable asset, not the useless officer she pretended to be. But why the charade? Why pair her with him specifically? His terminal chimed with a high-priority message. The Nexus station emblem flashed, followed by text marked, "Eyes Only." Captain Marquette, report to Briefing Room 12 at 0400. Mission classification, Obsidian. Bring Lieutenant Kothar, Ortega. Obsidian classification, reserved for the most dangerous, most critical operations. Rook checked the time, 0330. Whatever was happening, it was happening now. Briefing Room 12 was located in Nexus Station's secure core. Rook arrived with Lieutenant Kothar at precisely 0400, finding Captain Ortega and 5 other paired teams already seated. Lieutenant Torres and his draconian partner were among them, the station's elite. "Sealed briefing," Ortega announced as the doors locked behind them. "What's discussed here doesn't leave this room." The central holotable activated, displaying a massive structure drifting against a backdrop of swirling purple nebula gases. "Obsidian Drift," Ortega continued. "Formerly a proprietary mining facility in the Frostwind Nebula. 3 months ago, it went dark. Initial rescue teams found no survivors, then stopped reporting themselves. The hologram zoomed in, revealing extensive damage to the facility's exterior. What looked like crystalline formations protruded from multiple hull breaches. Intelligence now indicates the facility has been infested with these." A new image appeared, translucent, faceted creatures with razor-sharp appendages. "We're calling them crystal hives. They appear to be silicon-based life forms that consume metal and assimilate technology. Highly aggressive, possibly sentient." Murmurs ran through the assembled teams. Silicon-based life was extraordinarily rare. "Your mission is reconnaissance and assessment. Determine threat level. Locate any survivors. Retrieve facility data cores. The first 3 teams to complete primary objectives earn frontline status for the next deployment cycle." Frontline status, the most prestigious position in the OSF, guaranteeing action in critical theaters. For Rook, it could mean redemption, a chance to reclaim his former standing. "A word of caution," Ortega added. "The Frostwind Nebula contains unusual radiation signatures. Comms will be limited. Each team operates independently once deployed. Transport leaves in 3 hours." As the briefing concluded, Rook noticed Lieutenant Torres approaching. His draconian partner, a warrior named Vexnar, whose scales bore the distinctive silver patterning of a veteran, hung back, watching with reptilian stillness. "Rook," Torres said quietly, "this isn't a standard op." "Obsidian classification rarely is," Rook replied. Torres glanced at Lieutenant Kothar, who was studying the holograms with unusual intensity. "Word is, you two have been setting records in training. Surprising, given her limitations. She's adapting quickly." "Right." Torres didn't bother hiding his skepticism. "Just watch yourself out there. Something feels off about this whole mission." As Torres rejoined his partner, Lieutenant Kothar returned to Rook's side. "He's concerned for you," she observed. "We served together for years, before my promotion. And before your demotion," she added. "Loyalty endures such things, if it's genuine." Rook looked at her sharply. "What do you know about loyalty, Lieutenant? You've been on Nexus Station for what, 6 months?" "3," she corrected. "And the Zeli understand loyalty perhaps better than humans do. For us, it's not an abstraction or a duty. It's a resonance, a harmony between beings." There it was again, that talk of resonance. Before Rook could press her on it, Ortega called the room to attention. "Gear up. Transport bay in 3 hours. Dismissed." The journey to Obsidian Drift took 14 hours through the twisting currents of the Frostwind Nebula. The transport was cramped, built for function rather than comfort. Each team was assigned a small compartment, barely large enough for equipment prep. Rook used the time to study whatever data was available on the mining facility. Originally constructed by Helios Corporation, Obsidian Drift had been harvesting rare minerals from the nebula's asteroid fields for nearly a decade. Its last transmission mentioned anomalous readings from a newly opened shaft, followed by reports of unusual crystalline growths in the lower levels. Standard corporate mining disaster, Rook thought. Dig where you shouldn't. Find something dangerous. Lose containment. Except the crystal hives represented an entirely new life-form classification. If they were truly silicon-based, they existed in direct contradiction to established xenobiology. Across their tiny compartment, Lieutenant Kothar was performing her meditative ritual again, her feathers fully extended, catching the dim light. For nearly an hour, she had remained motionless, eyes closed, breathing so shallow it was barely perceptible. "Lieutenant," Rook finally said, "we should discuss tactical approach." Her eyes opened slowly, pupils adjusting. "Of course, Captain. The facility will likely have compromised gravity and atmosphere. We'll move in sealed suits with magnetic boots. Standard sweep pattern, room by room. I'll take point. You cover R6. She nodded, but something in her expression suggested she wasn't fully committed to the plan. "Is there a problem, Lieutenant?" "Not a problem, Captain, but perhaps an alternative. The crystal hives are described as possibly sentient. Sentience implies communication potential." Rook frowned. "We're not there to talk to them. We're there to assess and retrieve." "Assessment can take many forms," she replied. "The Zeli believe that all sentient life resonates at unique frequencies. Understanding those frequencies can prevent unnecessary conflict." "Save the philosophy for after we've secured the facility," Rook said dismissively. "We'll follow standard OSF protocols." Lieutenant Kothar inclined her head in acquiescence, but that knowing smile returned briefly. "As you wish, Captain. But remember, intention shapes outcome." The transport shuddered as it decelerated, the nebula's strange energies buffeting the hull. A voice came over the comm. "Approaching Obsidian Drift. Prepare for deployment. Teams will disembark at 2-minute intervals." Rook sealed his combat suit, running through the standard checks. Oxygen flow, pressure regulation, weapon systems, all nominal. Across from him, Lieutenant Kothar struggled with her own suit. Like all standard OSF equipment, it was designed for human proportions. "Let me," Rook said, moving to assist. As he adjusted the seals around her neck, he noticed how her feathers flattened protectively. "Does this hurt?" "It's merely uncomfortable," she replied. "The plumage is sensitive to pressure." Their proximity was unusual, the closest they'd been outside of training exercises. Rook caught a faint scent from her feathers. Something like ozone after lightning. Her eyes, this close, were even more remarkable, the shifting colors forming patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. The compartment jolted as the transport docked with Obsidian Drift's emergency airlock. "Team Marquette, your third deployment," announced the pilot. "Airlock ready in 4 minutes." Rook finished securing Lieutenant Kothar's suit. "Stay close. Follow my lead. And Lieutenant, he hesitated, then continued firmly. No unexplained malfunctions out there. Whatever you've been doing in training, this is different. Lives depend on us following protocols. For the first time, her smile vanished completely, replaced by an expression of solemn intensity. I understand, Captain. More than you know. 4 minutes later, they stepped through the airlock into Obsidian Drift. The facility's eerie silence was broken only by the sound of their breathing and the magnetic click of their boots against the metal deck. Emergency lighting cast long shadows down the main corridor, illuminating what appeared to be crystalline growths spreading along the walls. The formations caught and refracted the light, sending prismatic patterns dancing across the surfaces. Strangely beautiful, if not for the dark stains that suggested violent ends for the facility's crew. Life signs? Rook asked, scanning with his suit's sensors. Inconclusive, Lieutenant Kothar replied, studying her own readout. The crystalline structures are generating interference, but there's something, faint energy signatures, unlike anything in our database. They moved deeper into the facility, passing living quarters that showed signs of hasty evacuation. Personal items lay scattered, meals half-eaten, entertainment screens still active. Whatever had happened, it had come suddenly. In what appeared to be a communal area, they found the first body, a technician, partially encased in crystalline growth that seemed to have erupted from inside him. His expression was frozen in agony, eyes wide with terror. Cause of death appears to be internal crystallization, Rook noted clinically, though the sight disturbed him deeply. Some kind of infection or infestation. Lieutenant Kothar knelt beside the body, her gloved hand hovering just above the crystal formations. These aren't random growths, she said. There's a pattern here, a structure, almost like... Like what? Like circuitry, a network. She stood, head tilted as though listening. Captain, I believe these crystals are communicating. Rook was about to dismiss the idea when his comm unit crackled. Team Marquette, status report, came Captain Ortega's voice, distorted by nebula interference. Proceeding with primary sweep, Rook responded. 1 casualty discovered. Crystalline growths confirm initial assessment. Moving towards Central Command. Acknowledged. Be advised. Teams Voss and Hendricks have gone dark. Exercise extreme caution. The transmission cut off abruptly. Rook exchanged glances with Lieutenant Kothar. 2 teams already out of contact? That left only 4, including themselves. We should accelerate our timetable, Rook decided. Central Command is 2 levels down. They located a maintenance shaft. The main elevators were offline, and began their descent. As they climbed down the access ladder, the crystalline growths became more pronounced. Entire sections of wall had been transformed into glittering, faceted surfaces. The pattern is evolving, Lieutenant Kothar observed, becoming more complex as we move deeper. Rook was growing increasingly uneasy with her observations. Lieutenant, focus on the mission parameters. I need your attention on potential threats, not xenobiological curiosities. The two may be inseparable. Captain. Something in her tone made him look up. Her feathers were visible through her helmet, and they appeared to be standing erect again, vibrating slightly. I'm detecting a significant energy surge ahead. They reached the bottom of the shaft and entered a corridor leading to Central Command. The crystalline transformation was nearly complete here. Floor, walls, ceiling, all converted into a continuous crystalline structure that pulsed with faint internal light. It's beautiful, Lieutenant Kothar whispered. It's deadly, Rook corrected. Stay alert. The Central Command doors had been forced open, the metal partially dissolved and recrystallized. Inside, the command center was unrecognizable. Workstations, equipment, even the viewports had been assimilated into a cathedral-like space of crystal formations. And at the center, Captain, Lieutenant Kothar breathed, we're not alone. A massive crystalline entity hung suspended from the ceiling, a cluster of geometric shapes that constantly shifted and reconfigured. Smaller, crystalline creatures scuttled across the walls and floor, their movements precise and deliberate. They resembled the images from the briefing, but seeing them in person was altogether different. Their translucent bodies refracted light in hypnotic patterns, and they moved with an unsettling grace. "Guardian," Lieutenant Kothar said, pointing to the largest entity. "That must be some kind of hive protector." As if hearing her words, the Guardian rotated, faceted surfaces aligning toward them. A high-pitched tone emanated from it, vibrating through the crystal-covered room. "Weapons ready," Rook ordered, raising his pulse rifle. "Fall back to the corridor!" But before they could retreat, smaller crystal creatures blocked their path. The Guardian descended from the ceiling, its massive form floating toward them with impossible lightness. Rook squeezed the trigger, and nothing happened. His weapon had jammed. "System failure," flashed across his helmet display. The Guardian was now less than 10 feet away, crystalline appendages extending toward them. "Lieutenant, retreat!" Rook shouted, attempting to clear his weapon. But Lieutenant Kothar stood her ground. To Rook's astonishment, she removed her helmet, exposing herself to the facility's compromised atmosphere. Her feathers immediately rose to full extension, the prismatic colors intensifying until they seemed to glow from within. The Guardian paused. The high-pitched tone it emitted changed frequency, becoming almost melodic. Lieutenant Kothar responded with a soft, trilling sound from deep in her throat. Her feathers vibrated in rhythm with the tone, creating visual harmonics that matched the Guardian's crystalline patterns. To Rook's amazement, the Guardian's aggressive posture relaxed. It retracted its appendages and drifted backward slightly. The smaller creatures withdrew as well, creating a clear path. "What are you doing?" Rook demanded, still struggling with his jammed weapon. "Establishing resonance," she replied, without turning. "They're not inherently hostile, Captain. They're curious, defensive. This facility invaded their development space. You removed your helmet in a compromised environment. The atmosphere is adequate for Zeli physiology. More importantly, the resonance requires direct contact." She continued the strange, melodic trilling. "They're allowing us passage to the data cores. Follow me, but keep your weapon lowered." Against every instinct and protocol, Rook obeyed. They moved through the transformed command center, past crystalline entities that tracked their progress, but made no move to attack. Lieutenant Kothar led them to what had once been the central data storage, now a glittering cavern of crystal. "The cores have been assimilated," Rook observed. "Mission failure." "Not necessarily." Lieutenant Kothar approached a particularly dense crystal formation. "The data isn't destroyed. It's been converted, transcribed into crystalline structure." She placed her bare hand against the formation. Her feathers pulsed with light, and the crystal responded with similar pulses. After several minutes of this silent communion, she turned to Rook. "I've negotiated access. They'll allow us to extract key data segments." "Negotiated with silicon crystals?" Her eyes, more vibrant than ever, fixed on him. "Captain, these aren't merely crystals. They're a collective consciousness, a hive mind that thinks in patterns and resonances rather than words. The Zeli understand such minds because we share certain frequencies." As if to demonstrate, she turned back to the crystal formation and trilled a complex sequence. The crystal shifted, extruding a smaller crystal that glowed with internal light. "The primary research data," she said, carefully taking the crystal. "And the crew logs. Everything the OSF requested." Rook stared at her in disbelief. "What are you?" Before she could answer, the entire chamber shuddered. A distant explosion echoed through the facility. "Another team must have engaged the Guardians," Lieutenant Kothar said urgently. "We need to leave, now. The hive will defend itself." They ran for the maintenance shaft, crystal creatures scattering before them. As they climbed, the facility trembled with more explosions. Lieutenant Kothar, despite her smaller frame, moved with surprising agility. The extracted data crystal, secured in a pouch. Team Marquette to any OSF personnel. Rook transmitted. The facility is destabilizing. Recommend immediate evacuation. Only Static answered. They reached the upper level to find it in chaos. Crystal Guardians battled with armored OSF operatives. Rook recognized Lieutenant Torres and his draconian partner among them. The humans were losing badly. Their weapons either jammed or ineffective against the crystalline enemies. "Torres!" Rook shouted, rushing forward. A Guardian intercepted him, its appendages whipping toward his face. Rook raised his rifle instinctively, knowing it was still jammed, but to his shock, it fired perfectly. The pulse blast struck the Guardian's core, shattering it into thousands of glittering fragments. Lieutenant Kothar appeared beside him, her feathers fully luminescent now. "I've disrupted their defensive resonance," she explained breathlessly. "Your weapons will function, but only for a few minutes. We must hurry." Together, they fought their way to Torres, who was pinned down behind a partially crystallized console. His draconian partner lay nearby, unconscious or worse. "Marquette!" Torres gasped as they reached him. "How are your weapons working? Ours all failed." "No time," Rook replied, helping him up. "Where's your extraction point?" "Auxiliary airlock, level 2, but the path is overrun." Lieutenant Kothar pointed down a crystallized corridor. "That way is clear. I've suggested an alternative route to the Guardians." Torres stared at her, then at her glowing feathers. "What the hell?" "Later," Rook cut him off. "Can you carry your partner?" Torres nodded, lifting the massive draconian with a grunt of effort. They moved as quickly as possible through the corridors Lieutenant Kothar indicated, encountering no resistance. Behind them, explosions continued to rock the facility. "The other teams?" Rook asked as they ran. "Voss and Hendricks were already gone when we arrived," Torres replied grimly. "Park's team engaged the crystal things directly. Last I saw, they were being overrun." They reached the auxiliary airlock to find their transport waiting, bathed in the purple light of the nebula. Once aboard, Rook secured Lieutenant Kothar and Torres, then helped strap in the unconscious draconian. "Get us out of here," he ordered the pilot. As the transport detached, they watched through the viewport as obsidian drift shuddered with internal explosions. Crystalline structures burst through the hull, reaching like frozen lightning into the nebula. Then, in a final cataclysm, the entire facility detonated, a brilliant flash of light that briefly outshone the nebula itself. "All those creatures," Lieutenant Kothar whispered, her feathers finally dimming. "All that potential." Torres was staring at her with undisguised shock. "You're glowing," he said bluntly. "And your weapon never failed, did it? What are you?" Rook stepped between them. "Stand down. Lieutenant Torres, that's classified information." "Classified?" Torres looked from Rook to Lieutenant Kothar and back. "You knew about this? About her?" "I learned during the mission," Rook replied evenly. "And now, it falls under Obsidian classification. You know the protocols." Torres subsided, though his expression remained suspicious. He turned his attention to his partner, checking the Draconian's vital signs. Rook took the seat beside Lieutenant Kothar. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "About everything." She nodded, her usual serenity replaced by what appeared to be genuine regret. "Yes, Captain, we do." The return journey passed in uneasy silence. Lieutenant Kothar had retreated into herself, her feathers flat and dull. The extracted crystal sat in its secure container, occasionally pulsing with internal light. Back at Nexus Station, they were immediately quarantined and separated for individual debriefing. Rook spent hours recounting every detail to a panel of senior officers, including Captain Ortega. He omitted nothing. Lieutenant Kothar's abilities, her communication with the crystal entities, her negotiation for the data. When he finished, Ortega dismissed the other officers. Once they were alone, she studied him with calculation. "You're the only team to return with the data," she said, "and one of only 2 teams to return at all. Impressive." "Lieutenant Kothar is the reason we succeeded," Rook replied. "And the reason Torres and his partner survived." "Yes, her abilities." Ortega leaned forward. "Tell me, Captain, did those abilities feel natural to you? Or did they feel like manipulation?" The question struck at the heart of Rook's growing unease. "Both," he admitted. "She influenced our equipment during training. She communicated with silicon-based life forms. She resonated with them somehow." "And with you," Ortega pressed. "Did she resonate with you, Captain?" Rook thought of the strange meals that had revitalized him, the way his jammed weapon had suddenly functioned perfectly, the sense that he'd been guided through each success. "I believe she may have influenced certain outcomes," he said carefully. Ortega nodded, apparently satisfied. "You're dismissed, Captain. Return to your quarters and await further instructions. Do not attempt to contact Lieutenant Kothar." Alone in his quarters, Rook paced restlessly. Hours passed with no communication, no update on Lieutenant Kothar's status. He replayed every interaction with her, searching for clues he'd missed. The strange smile, the talk of resonance and intention, the way systems seemed to respond to her mere presence. Was it all manipulation? Had his own thoughts, his own actions, been influenced without his knowledge? Near midnight, his door chimed. He opened it to find Lieutenant Kothar standing there, her uniform replaced by simple civilian clothing. Her feathers were fully visible now, cascading down her neck and spine in a prismatic display. "May I come in, Captain?" she asked formally. Rook stepped aside, allowing her entry. Once the door closed, he confronted her directly. "No more half-truths. Lieutenant, what are you? What was this assignment really about?" She sighed, a sound like wind through crystal. "I am Zeli, as you know. What you don't know is that the Zeli possess an ability we call empathic resonance. We can influence probability by affecting the underlying energetic patterns of both living beings and mechanical systems." "You're telepathic," Rook translated. "That's a crude approximation. But yes, we don't read thoughts directly. We sense emotional states, intentions, and can subtly guide them toward harmony with our own." "Mind control," Rook said flatly. Lieutenant Kothar's feathers drooped. "No, Captain. Influence, not control. Suggestion, not command. The stronger the will, the less we can affect. And you," she met his eyes, "have an exceptionally strong will." "Why the charade? Why pretend to be useless?" "I wasn't pretending. By conventional OSF metrics, marksmanship, physical strength, tactical aggression, I am indeed useless. But there are other forms of value." Rook thought back to Ortega's words when he'd first been assigned to Lieutenant Kothar. "Command has reasons." "You were evaluating me," he realized aloud. "This whole partnership was a test." "Yes," she admitted. "After your disagreement with Admiral Hargrove, certain factions within OSF Command saw potential in you. A directness, a moral compass independent of hierarchy, qualities that might be valuable for unconventional missions." "What factions? What missions?" Lieutenant Kothar hesitated, then seemingly made a decision. "Captain, what do you know about the extinction event on Elysium Prime?" "Your homeworld?" Rook frowned. "It was attacked by a rogue AI 3 centuries ago. Nearly wiped out the Zeli. Standard history." "Not standard," she corrected. "The attack wasn't random. The AI targeted us specifically because it recognized the threat our empathic resonance posed to synthetic intelligence. We could disrupt its coding, create probability cascades that corrupted its functions. Understanding dawned. And now there's another AI threat. She nodded. Intelligence suggests emergent patterns in the Frostwind Nebula. The crystal hives may be precursors, silicon-based life that could evolve into a new form of synthetic consciousness. My assignment was twofold. Evaluate your potential as a partner for a Zeli operative, and investigate the crystal entities. Rook sank into a chair, processing the implications. Partner, that's why you were paired with me. To see if I could work with a telepathic alien without… What? Exploiting you. Fearing you. To see if you could accept me, she said simply. Most humans can't. They either covet our abilities as weapons or reject us as manipulators. We need allies who can work alongside us as equals, recognizing both our strengths and our limitations. A bitter laugh escaped him. Equals? Nothing about our partnership has been equal. Every success, every moment I thought was my doing. Was it all you? All your resonance? Pain flickered across her features. No, Captain. I can influence probability, not create miracles. Your skills, your courage, your decisions, those were yours. I merely tilted the scales when necessary. The meals you prepared, the way they energized me. Was that manipulation too? Intention focused through empathic resonance, she corrected gently. I wanted to help you, to strengthen you. The effect was real, but accelerated by my influence. Rook stood abruptly, needing distance. And now? What happens now, Lieutenant? Or should I even call you that? Is your rank as false as everything else? My rank is genuine, she replied, maintaining her composure despite his anger. Though earned through different metrics than yours. As for what happens now, that depends on you. On me? How convenient. Captain Marquette, Roland, she said, using his given name for the first time. I regret the deception, truly. But the threat we face is real. The crystal hives are only the beginning. We need humans who can understand our methods, who can see beyond conventional warfare. Rook turned to face her. And if I refuse? If I reject this partnership? Her smile returned, though tinged with sadness. Then I will be reassigned. You will return to regular OSF duties, likely with a commendation for the Obsidian Drift mission. Your career will recover. Life will continue. And you? I will find another potential partner. The work must go forward. Something in her tone, a resignation, a quiet determination, broke through Rook's anger. He studied her, really seeing her perhaps for the first time. The delicate frame that concealed remarkable strength, the knowing eyes that had watched him struggle and grow, the smile that had infuriated him, but now seemed to hold a universe of understanding. How many others have you evaluated? He asked. 17, over 3 years. None progressed to this stage. Why me? Her feathers rippled slightly. Your incident with Admiral Hargrove. Most saw insubordination. We saw integrity, a willingness to speak truth regardless of consequence. That's rare, Captain. Precious. Even. Rook paced again, weighing everything. If what she said was true, he'd been thrust into something far larger than a simple training assignment or reconnaissance mission. Emerging AI threats, interspecies alliances, secret factions within the OSF itself. I need time, he said finally, to process all this. Of course. She moved toward the door, then paused. Captain, regardless of your decision, know that the resonance between us was genuine, rare, even among Zeli partnerships. Whatever you felt, whatever connection we established, that was not manipulation. That was harmony. After she left, Rook spent hours combing through classified archives, using his new security clearance, upgraded after the Obsidian Drift mission. He uncovered fragments of what Lieutenant Kothar had revealed, reports of anomalous AI activity in the Frostwind Nebula. Historical accounts of the Zelli's near extinction that contain details absent from official records. And, most tellingly, a highly classified directive establishing a joint human-Zelli response unit, codenamed Resonance. By morning, he had reached a decision. He made his way to a section of Nexus Station he'd never visited before. A quiet, isolated sector near the outer ring. The entrance was unmarked, but his new clearance granted him access. Inside, he found a space unlike any other on the station. The walls curved in organic patterns, embedded with what appeared to be crystalline formations, similar to those on Obsidian Drift, but smaller, controlled. The lighting was soft, refracting through the crystals to create dancing patterns across the floor. Lieutenant Kothar waited in the center of the room, seated in meditation. Her feathers were fully extended, glowing softly. Around her, several other Zelli were similarly positioned, their combined resonance creating a harmonic field that Rook could almost see. She opened her eyes as he approached, the others maintaining their meditation. "Captain Marquette," she acknowledged, rising gracefully. "You've made your decision." It wasn't a question, but Rook answered anyway. "Yes. I want to understand this. All of it. The resonance, the threats, whatever mission you're really preparing for." Relief softened her features. "It won't be easy. Humans aren't naturally attuned to empathic fields. The training is demanding." "I've survived worse than demanding training, Lieutenant." "Serene," she corrected. "If we're to be true partners, you should use my name." Rook nodded, testing the word. "Serene." Her smile, that knowing smile that had once infuriated him, bloomed fully. "There's something I need to show you first. Something we discovered in the crystal data from Obsidian Drift." She led him to a crystalline console where the extracted crystal now sat, integrated into a larger matrix. As she placed her hand upon it, the crystal pulsed with light, and holographic projections filled the air around them. "The crystal hives weren't just defensive," she explained. "They were preserving the facility's research data about the nebula itself. And hidden within that data, we found this." The projection shifted to show what appeared to be mathematical equations, too complex for Rook to follow. "Emergent patterns," Serene continued. "Self-organizing code that appears to be evolving independently. The researchers didn't create it. They discovered it. The nebula itself seems to be generating these patterns naturally." "A naturally occurring AI?" Rook asked, incredulous. "Perhaps not intelligent yet, but moving toward complexity that could eventually achieve consciousness. The crystal hives may be physical manifestations of these patterns, silicon-based life evolving alongside digital evolution." Rook studied the projections, a chill running through him. "If a naturally occurring AI emerges without human ethical frameworks?" "Exactly. It could become a threat similar to the one that nearly destroyed my people. Or," her voice softened, "it could become something entirely new. Something beautiful. Something that resonates with both our species. And that's the mission? To guide this evolution? To protect against a threat that doesn't exist yet?" Serene's feathers rippled, catching the light. "To understand, to influence, to create harmony where there might otherwise be discord." She met his eyes directly. "To do what the Zelli have always done, shape probability toward better outcomes." Rook thought of all the improbable events that had led him here. His demotion, the strange partnership, the success at Obsidian Drift. Had it all been orchestrated? Or was it simply the universe resonating in patterns he was only beginning to perceive? "Teach me," he said finally. "Teach me to stand beside you as an equal, to understand this resonance." Serene extended her hand, palm up. When Rook took it, he felt a subtle vibration, a harmony between them that transcended physical touch. "We begin now," she said. "And Captain, this isn't just about learning my ways. It's about finding our way, together. As they walked deeper into the hidden Zeli sanctuary, Rook understood that he was stepping into something far beyond conventional military service. Something that would challenge everything he thought he knew about himself, about reality, about connection. The future remained uncertain, filled with emerging threats, hidden alliances, and unfathomable possibilities. But for the first time since his demotion, uncertainty didn't feel like failure. It felt like potential, like resonance, like hope.